Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover over this hour. My name is Emily Swanson. This is Virtual Career Fair Prep. Hopefully you are in the right place. And I'm the Assistant Director of Career Education over at Texas Career Engagement. So very excited to talk about virtual career fairs. I know they can be really intimidating for students, career fairs in general, and then especially being virtual can sort of heighten that kind of fear and not really knowing what to expect. So that's why we're here for you today to talk a little bit about those. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. We will be recording this, so feel free to kind of check that out later on our YouTube channel. And we also do have captioning available. So if you would like to use captioning, there should be a CC button somewhere on here where you're able to kind of toggle that on and off. And then I will also be answering any questions that may come up throughout, so feel free to use the Q&A button as well on Zoom. Okay, so a little bit of today's outline for us. So we're going to be doing an overview of some of the most common platforms that we'll be using this year for virtual career fairs. So we'll talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between them. You'll get to see a few screenshots of what they actually look like and what the functionality kind of is like. And then we will go over what to do before, during, and after a career fair, how to craft an elevator pitch, what that even is, what goes into it, and then some basic virtual career fair etiquette tips. And also how to de-stress. These are really stressful times, and career fairs are stressful in general. So we'll talk a little bit about how to manage some of that anxiety as well. Okay, so first things kind of first, to access any of our career fairs throughout the university, you'll want to go on Hydrate Texas, powered by Handshake. So you already have an account. I know this because you are in this place right now. So if you go to the same place that you went to find this event, you'll just go to the events page and you'll be able to see any of the career fairs that are kind of going on for this semester. We'll be going over Brazen, Career Eco, and Handshake. Those are the three most common platforms that we'll be using this semester. McCombs will be specifically using Brazen for next week's career fair. Engineering and Geosciences will be using the Career Eco platform. And then most of the other career service offices on campus will be using Handshake for their career platform. So we'll talk and kind of focus a little bit more on those. There might be some other ones, but you'll kind of get the general gist of it today. So one thing to keep in mind is that you must register for each of the career fairs through that specific platform. So if it's not on Handshake, you need to actually create an account on Brazen or Career Eco in order to actually access them. So just make sure that you do that, and we'll be talking a lot about creating your different profiles as well, because it's really a very important tip for it. And just as a reminder, Texas Career Engagement does actually have a schedule of the different career fairs on campus, and it's listed actually at this link. We'll be sending out these slides later, so you'll have access to actually find that. But you can also take a screenshot if you like. So you are able as a student to go and visit any career fair that you wish. So know that you have that ability. There might be some restrictions based on the time frame of when you can go to these career fairs, but you should be able to attend any one that you wish. All right. So this looks a little intimidating. We're going to go through this. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of the similarities and differences between the platforms that you might notice whenever you're actually using them. If you go onto the various websites for them, you will also be able to find some tutorials. So if you want an even deeper dive into some of these platforms, feel free to go and find their tutorials on their website. I found them very helpful when kind of putting this together. So keep in mind, this is just sort of an overview of these different platforms that we see here. So The first thing to keep in mind is that there isn't really an exciting kickoff. It just kind of happens. Most of these, you go to a website and that's kind of all it is. There's no, checking in. There's no sort of like opening the doors as an in-person career fair would kind of happen. So it is a little strange. You're just kind of there and you're like, okay, I'm here. Let's go talk to some people. So that can be a little different than maybe an in-person sort of career fair. So kind of keep that in mind. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these differences. So Brazen and Career Eco have historically relied more on the text-based chat functions. However, we are seeing a little bit more use of that audio and video capabilities in those two platforms. Right now it is optional, so it's kind of up to the employer whether or not they're going to use it. So I would say if you are going into one of those platforms, just be prepared to be either using only text or maybe having a video chat. So that's a little bit different than Handshake, where you're automatically using that video and audio capability. So a little bit of a difference there in how that sort of operates. Again, you must create an account in each of those platforms. So it's very, very important that you do that. You create your profile and you fill it out completely. A lot of employers are adding in different qualifications. So things like GPA, maybe your major, different levels of experiences. And if you don't have those listed in your profile, it may automatically disqualify you from actually talking to those employers. So make sure that you do fill that out completely. Very important step to actually do. So the other thing that is a little bit different is in a couple of these different platforms, you can sort of express interest. So in Career Eco and Handshake, you can actually express your interest beforehand, which is a really helpful step. So it shows employers that you have already followed them. It's called following in Handshake, expressing interest in Career Eco. But it does show those employers that you have some sort of interest in them. So they will kind of take note of that. And I've heard that if you don't already follow them or express interest, sometimes they're not sure about how serious maybe you are about their organization. To that, with Career Eco, if you have expressed interest, occasionally an employer might actually reach out before the fair and invite you to speak with them during the fair. So again, keep in mind that you want to have that profile filled out. You want to have already expressed interest before the fair actually begins. So maybe log on a few days before and kind of take care of that. Handshake, that is not the case. Employers can't reach out to you before the fair, but they may reach out to you after. So this is where things start to diverge pretty significantly. So Handshake has you actually schedule beforehand. So I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of what it's actually like to be in Brazen, Career Eco, and Handshake. So Brazen and Career Eco, they kind of have this virtual lobby, if you will, and different virtual booths. So when you're starting out with Brazen and you're going through that, you can set your availability. They can see whether or not you're available to chat. You can turn it off if you're feeling maybe a little overwhelmed, you want to take a break, anything like that. And then you can toggle that back on once you're ready again. It's a little bit different. You will actually be queuing up into different lines. So whenever you get in there, you'll click on the organization and you'll say, I want to get in line for this particular organization or company. You can get into multiple lines, which is nice. So you can sort of wait your turn to talk. And then let's say you're talking with another employer and somebody else is ready to talk. It'll give you some time to accept that chat. So keep that in mind too. You can save these chats. They are also timed. So chats are around 10 minutes each in Brazen. So know that you do have a kind of limited amount of time to actually be speaking with an employer. The thing that is kind of interesting is that you will actually be able to rate and take notes. So once you have talked with a recruiter or an employer, you'll be able to go in and sort of take some notes about whatever it was that you talked about, sort of your impressions about it. And then you're able to kind of reference that later. Employers can't see this, so don't worry about it, but it can kind of help keep all of those one-on-one chats sort of straight in your brain. So that is kind of Brazen. With Career Eco, actually, one more thing to kind of say about Brazen. If you are in line, you can still, you will, and the career fair actually ends, you will not be able to talk with that employer. So just keep that in mind, that if there is time running out, you may or may not be able to actually meet with them. If you're already in a chat with them when the career fair ends, you can finish up your conversation. It's not going to cut you off. So just wanted to make sure I kind of mentioned that, so you can sort of time it out correctly for your needs. Okay, so going on to Career Eco. So this is a little bit different. It sort of starts out as a group chat. The employer might be using video. Again, they might not be, but it's a little bit different. You're kind of in this sort of group area, and it's supposed to mimic the natural ebb and flow of what an in-person career fair is kind of like. So people coming in and out of the chat, maybe having some conversations and kind of talking with each other. If an employer decides that they want to talk to you further, they may then invite you to have a one-on-one chat. So you kind of start out in this group sort of setting, and then you may move into an individual chat later. And then finally in Handshake, this is as much different than Brazen or Career Eco and what that kind of looks like. So Handshake, it's really important that you actually schedule in advance. So you can schedule group sessions, you can schedule one-on-one sessions. The group sessions are going to be 30 minutes, whereas the individual sessions are going to be more in the 10-minute kind of range. So I got to actually try this one out. The group sessions, it's a little bit harder to carry out conversations. So what you might actually be seeing these group sessions as is more like an information session. You're getting information from an employer about what they're about and what types of people that they're actually looking for. They may have some back and forth with people. I felt like it's a little bit harder to carry on a conversation. It only shows the person who is actually speaking at that time. So whenever you decide to speak, you will be kind of projected for everybody on camera. So it's a little bit different of a scenario. I think the group sessions are really good for students who are maybe first-year students or second-year students who maybe aren't quite sure, they haven't tried a career fair before, and they kind of want to dip their toes and see what that's like. I think this could be really good for those students. I think it's also really good for students who maybe aren't sure about a particular employer. Maybe they don't know much about them and they want to kind of visit to see if they would like to reconnect with them after the fair. So I think that could be a pretty helpful way to sort of decide whether or not you want to do a one-on-one or a group session. Those one-on-ones, I would say, are probably a little bit more if you're serious about that employer, that organization. So make sure you're kind of thinking through strategically how you want to actually do it. And in that case, you want to sign up as early as possible so that you have the most options of those different times, because they can fill up very quickly. So kind of keep that in mind, that you want to make sure you get to meet with as many people as possible. The other thing is with Career Eco and Handshake, you do want to sort of balance out standing out versus being overwhelming. So you kind of want to walk that line between, not talking enough and maybe talking too much. So keep that in mind too. Some things that I also noticed when I was using these, Chrome and Firefox seem to work better. Safari, there were a lot of issues with it. So whenever you are sort of logging in any of these platforms, I would probably suggest using the Chrome or Firefox browsers just on the safe side. Safari seemed to have more issues with the audio and video side of things. In that case, you also want to show up early to troubleshoot. So in case you are having any audio visual issues, you definitely want to show up a little bit early just to test that out. And you definitely want to show up on time to any of those one-on-one or group sessions, especially in Handshake. So you definitely want to make sure that you are there and you're kind of showing your best professional self. You also should receive reminders through email. So make sure that your preferences allow you to receive these emails. And again, there's no real ceremony or thing that tells you that you've really entered the space. So make sure that you're marking your calendars of when all these things sort of happen. And keep in mind that all of these different platforms are adapting to function better because a lot of people are using this now for their virtual career fairs since we have COVID, and then also just the accessibility piece. It's a lot more accessible for people. So you may see new features. This is kind of what it looks like at this moment in time. So let's kind of go in really quickly. So this is what Brazen looks like. So on the left side here, you can see this is where you would actually register for the event. That's kind of the pathway, what the things that you need to fill out are. So that's kind of creating your profile there too. If you look on the right side here, we have what a lobby actually looks like. So you can see at the top, you can toggle your chat availability if you're available or not. You can also search booths. And if you look at the lower right-hand side, you can see what these different booths look like. And you can actually select and get in line for these booths using the kind of slider, the little toggler down there. So that is what Brazen looks like a little bit. Over here, this is still Brazen. Over on the left-hand side, you can see what a booth actually looks like, which is kind of neat. You can see the representatives who are available, if there's any discussions going on at that time, and then content. So if they have anything like brochures or information about them, things will be kind of posted there. They also have an About Us and a tab for any job opportunities or internship opportunities that they're currently having. So if you look at the lower piece here, this is sort of what the chat part will look like. This is sort of the end of it where you're actually rating and taking notes, but you can kind of see what the chat and how they sort of line up are too. So that's sort of Brazen. And again, Brazen is going to be the one that McCombs is using for next week's career fair. Let's move on to Career Eco. So again, this is going to be engineering and geosciences also next week. So keep in mind, those are two different platforms. So over here, I like that Career Eco will actually tell you, you need to upload your resume, you need to kind of fill out the rest of this information. So it'll give you some notifications of what you sort of need to do while you're in the platform. And then right below that, you can see what going into the fair actually looks like. So you would hit chat now, and it would take you into a list of different booths, which we'll show you on the next slide. Down here on the right-hand side, you can see the messages. So that's where if an employer does contact you beforehand, that's where all those messages will go. So make sure that you are checking those beforehand. Okay, so here is the Career Eco booths. So up on the upper left-hand side, you can see where it just kind of lists out all the different booths, and you can click join chat and you'll be able to sort of be in this group chat, which is here on the bottom right side. So that is what the chat actually looks like. Please ignore all the little pop-up things that are on here. It's sort of telling you some of the different preferences and things that you can do in those chats. So you can see the representatives. You can also see people coming and going throughout the booth whenever you are in that chat. And then they will then ask you to do a one-on-one later. That's kind of Career Eco. So we're going to take a look at Handshake now. It is a little less exciting looking than the other two, but it's still good. And I will say that the university looks like most of the career service offices will be using Handshake for their career fairs. So up here on the top left is how you register. Because you all probably have accounts in Handshake, it's pretty easy to register. Basically, all you do is click the register button at the very top. So very simple, easy process for that. One thing that you do want to make sure that you do is change your profile visibility. So you'll want to change that to community to be able to actually talk with employers. If you're set to private, you will not be able to chat with any employers. So again, very important that you change that to a community setting. Here you have my face on here. So you can see at the top, that's what it sort of looks like, what one of the booths look like, and the scheduling page. So you can click on, under group sessions, okay, I want to click on the sessions and it'll give you a list of times. Same with the one-on-ones. So they'll kind of have them split up like that. At the bottom right-hand side, you can see your schedule. So that is what it'll look like. So this was the one that I did for our practice fair. You just click join session when you are ready. So you'll get a sort of image of the one on the left-hand side of my face. So that was me practicing my audio and video for this particular fair. So it'll give you some time to actually test that out before you actually join the session. So keep that in mind too. I also like that Handshake has some tips on how to stand out at a fair. So it's kind of a nice touch that they have. The other thing is it will not allow you to schedule 2 sessions at the same time. So you have to be very strategic in how you're actually picking out who you want to speak with. So keep that in mind too. So now that we have talked about all of the different platforms that we have, we're going to go into what is it actually like to be in a virtual career fair, and how do you actually do this? So I know that's kind of the scariest part for students, is really getting to know, okay, how do I talk to a recruiter? So we're going to get to that right now. So the first thing that you want to do, like I said, I'm just going to keep repeating it, update your profile in that platform before the fair. Make sure that you have had that filled out. For sure, put your GPA, and if you're doing one in Handshake, make sure that you have that privacy setting set to community. So again, employers may put in those qualifications based on GPA, major, experience, etc. And if you don't have that entered, it automatically disqualifies you. So don't give them a reason to filter you out before you've actually had a chance to talk with them. So just a pro tip on that. Next thing that you'll want to do is research employers and take notes. I have a lot of students asking me, okay, well, what does researching actually mean? So we're going to talk about that today. You can actually see who is coming to the career fair beforehand, and you'll have a chance to look them up to get an idea of what they're about. So look at companies that you're interested in, but also keep an open mind. Maybe look at some other organizations or companies that maybe you wouldn't normally think of, just to see, would you be a good fit? It's a good practice to look up their mission statement, get to see their values and what they stand for, and see if you share some of those too. Check out any ongoing projects or programs maybe that they're working on, and definitely check out the department that you're most interested in working for too. I like to do a quick sort of virtual kind of Google search for them, see any news. If it's good or bad, are there any news articles out there of things that are going on at this particular organization? And you can also use Glassdoor to read any reviews. So where do you find the list? Sabrina's asking for the employers that will be at the fair. If you go to that Texas Career Engagement, the career fair schedule, you'll be able to click on the students page for that. And you will actually be able to see everybody who is showing up. If that doesn't work, go on the specific career fair or the career service office, and you'll be able to look at their career fair and see all who's coming. So it's pretty easy to find it. I've also seen some different organizations and some different offices on campus have apps too. So that's kind of a newer thing. I know engineering has an app, I believe. The rest I'm not so sure about, but you can kind of check into some of those. Yeah, and the nice thing about being virtual is that you can actually take notes and you can have them in front of you when you are talking with these recruiters and these employers. So this way you can have a little bit more of a productive and engaging conversation and really show off your interest and what you've already looked. All right. You also want to create some questions to ask employers. This is really good, again, to show your interest and show that you've learned and you want to know a little bit more about what it is that they do. So good questions make really good impressions. So some basic ones that you can sort of ask, because I know that's a big fear of, well, what is it that what do I ask? Anything that you want to know within kind of reason. So anything that helps you get to know them as an organization. So I, would like to ask things like, what's your favorite part about being at this organization? Why did you choose to work for these particular groups? What does a typical day sort of look like for an intern or an employee? A couple other things that you might want to know, especially in this sort of environment, is how do you engage with employees or interns virtually? Is there a way that you have actually transitioned into that virtual space? I think that's going to be a really helpful one. The other thing, because this is this virtual platform and you can't just kind of reach for a business card as you normally would, asking how can I reach you outside of the fair? So getting their contact information is always a good sort of way to be able to follow up with them later. The other thing you will want to do is to have your resume uploaded and entered into the platform. So again, like we've talked about, have that profile completely filled out, and that includes your resume. You won't actually be able to share your resume with the employer, so you can't really share your screen, but you can have it in front of you just to help you sort of jog your own memory. I know that seems silly, but sometimes when you're under pressure and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I've done in my life. So keep that resume kind of in front of you. They'll be able to review it later or maybe even before the fair. So they may have already seen it. And then you'll want to also create an elevator pitch. So this is just a way to introduce yourself. Don't worry about this right now. We're going to go over this in a couple slides. So we'll come back to that. You'll also want to find a quiet and distraction-free space to talk with employers. So I know this can be really challenging right now, especially depending on your home situation. If you have a lot of people, or maybe you're in a dorm and you have a roommate, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but just kind of try your best. And keep in mind that there aren't any backgrounds. So if you are using more of that video and audio capability, there are no backgrounds like you have in Zoom. So like this life science library for me. So keep in mind your decoration that is actually behind you. So if you can find a blank wall or maybe something that has kind of minimal, but maybe some tasteful decor behind you. You will also want to log in early and test your devices. It's really important. Being in a virtual world adds that layer of just, being really nerve-wracked about technology. So feel free to kind of log in a little bit early, test all these things out, really use it to troubleshoot. And then some of the career fairs may actually have sort of a help room. So there might be a separate Zoom room where you can go in and ask any career service office, any technical questions to kind of help through, or any other general questions that you may have. So definitely use that if it is available. I'm not sure what every office is doing, but definitely check into that. And then lastly, dress accordingly. So you definitely want to dress according to what the career fair says that the dress code is. If it doesn't say, I like to say dress up a little bit more than you normally would. So that just kind of helps show your professionalism as well. Even if you are using more of the text-based platforms, you may still want to dress up just in case they do ask for a video chat. So just be careful of that. Make sure that you're prepared for both of those scenarios. And this can also help you get in the right mindset. So it could help you boost your confidence and really feel ready to talk with different employers, even if you are doing it over chat. Okay. So let's get a little bit into the elevator pitch. So basically, this really makes a lot of students nervous, right? I think it's similar to that question of tell me about yourself at an interview. So it's a really broad question. It's a really broad thing, and you might not know exactly how to kind of answer that. So we're going to break it down. It's going to be very simple, so don't worry too much about this. It's just a brief introduction into your academic and professional background, any skills maybe that you have, and your career goals. So what are things that you want to be doing in the future? And I would say for sure tailor this to whichever organization you're speaking to. That really does show them how you align with their interests and their values, and that you've also done your research. I also like to add in a call to action. So this might be a question, right? It might be something that kind of gets at, here's why I'm talking to you in the first place. So maybe asking a question about what their organization is like, what their internship program, something that sort of furthers that conversation. And then you will also want to write this down digitally to share. So if you're using one of those text-based platforms, this can be really helpful just to have on a Word doc somewhere, or maybe a notepad where you can very easily copy and paste that into the chat very quickly. So you're not spending a ton of time having to type it over every single, recruiter that you're talking to. So you do want to keep it short. If you are saying this out loud too, you want to keep it below a minute. So this is a pretty quick thing that you're going to get into. You'll also want to avoid any cliches. So those may come off as disingenuous, or quotes, or things like, what starts here changes the world. Maybe try to avoid some of those things, because that can come off as kind of a canned response, and you definitely want to come off as genuine. Also avoid any jargon, especially if you're going maybe for more technical roles. Remember that you are speaking with a recruiter who may or may not know all of the technical things that you're aware of. So, if you're interested in software development, maybe saying things like knowing about R or Python, but maybe not getting into the very, very technical parts unless you were asked about those. So keep in mind your audience and who you're talking to. One of the keys is to focus really on what makes you unique. So you might have the same major as some of the other people at these particular fairs, but really focus on what makes you unique and what gives you a different perspective. So thinking about, do you have a minor or certificate that's in something slightly different? Have you had a really influential experience that you want to kind of bring up and talk about that might align with this employer? Even hobbies and things like that do kind of align with more of those professional interests as well. So really think about what makes you unique, because you do have a lot of unique things. We don't always feel that we are, though. And if you're having trouble with that, feel free to kind of meet with a career counselor or career coach in your career service office too. And then lastly, practice, right? So you don't want to over or under practice. Maybe practice this a few times. Try to have it sound pretty genuine, and you can practice with your family or friends. And I'll also show you another tool that you can use to sort of practice as well, called Big Interview. So here's a couple examples, and feel free to ask questions as we go too. I know this can be a little bit more of that stressful piece of things. So I'm going to read these off for you. So the first one is maybe more of a more experienced student. Maybe they're more like a junior or senior, maybe they have a lot of experience, or they're ready for that job piece. So hello, I am fill in the blank. I'm a senior biology BSA major with a minor in government and a certificate program in human rights and social justice. I have past experience with working with the City of Austin and various law firms on disability advocacy. I'm interested in working with nonprofits to help increase access for people with disabilities. And I noticed that your organization specializes in working with this population. Can you tell me a little bit more about fill in the program, project, whatever it is that you kind of notice that they're working on? So that's kind of maybe for a student who is more ready to actually go for that job post-graduation. But as you can see, it's pretty short. It's not too much, but it gives you enough that you can sort of get a good idea of what this person is sort of about too. And then we'll read this one. So this is maybe more of a first year or a second year student. So hello, I'm fill in the blank. I'm a first-year rhetoric and writing major. I'm interested in exploring brand development and using my writing skills to expand social media presence for organizations. Can you tell me more about your internship program? Right, so again, short, it's to the point. Both of these kind of get at some transferable skills, maybe some differing experience, right? The first one is maybe a biology student, but maybe they're going more for this nonprofit role. So it's kind of a different perspective that might be in there. And they both have this kind of call to action at the end of it of trying to further that conversation and getting a little bit more out of that recruiter. So this is kind of a helpful tool, so feel free to use some form of this. You can always Google too, or come in and practice, and we can sort of brainstorm what maybe an elevator pitch for you might look like. So these are just a couple different examples. Everyone's might look a little different. All right, so some etiquette during the fair. So you want to be attentive and use active listening skills. So whenever you are doing those video chats with those employers, you want to kind of nod, maybe smile appropriately, really use those skills. This can be, give a really great first impression to you too and make you seem very personable. If you are using more of those text-based platforms, you'll definitely want to use good grammar, punctuation, spelling, and full sentences. This really showcases your professionalism and that you're taking it very seriously. You know, it's not just like you're texting this person, you are sort of putting in the effort to write out a full sentence. Looking at the camera. So when you're chatting over video, this is something that I struggle with because it feels weird to just look at a camera and not at your screen. But that sort of helps simulate some eye contact. And again, it can be sort of natural. You don't have to stare the actual camera down. Feel free to sort of do what you would normally do when you're talking, but imagine that the camera is somebody's face, right? Ask questions. So again, you wrote out all those beautiful questions that you have. Ask those. Feel free to kind of make this a conversation between the two of you. And also ask their contact information to be able to follow up after. And when you are following up, that might be to send a thank you for, you know, hey, thank you for the conversation. I really enjoyed talking about X, Y, and Z. And I think I'd be a really great fit and I'd love to know more about blah, right? It's pretty simple follow-up. You can also ask any additional questions or if you felt like, you know, you wanted to have a deeper conversation about whatever that organization is, feel free, you know, especially in those ones that have the time chats, feel free to kind of ask to further that conversation. If for whatever reason, and hopefully this is not something that you will have to do, but if for some reason there is any inappropriate behavior on the employer side and you're feeling really weird about things, you can right-click on their panel in Handshake and report a user. I'm not sure if you can do this in Brazen and Career Eco, but you definitely can in Handshake. So keep that in mind. You probably will never have to use it, but it's always good just to know that you do have that option if something weird happens in some of those individual chats. You kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so some ways to help you get through, right? It's very stressful. I get it. It is scary to talk to recruiters and to feel like your fate is in their hands, right? But keep in mind, it is a two-way conversation. So remember that they are people too, right? This is a conversation that you're having, and you want to make sure that that employer is a good fit for you too. So ask them questions, ask them about their company culture, get to know them a little bit. You know, even stopping to say like, hey, how are you doing today? How's this, you know, kind of virtual scenario been for you? You know, something to kind of break the ice can kind of start you off on the right foot and can help you kind of take some of that power back to really realize that they're people too, and I want to get to know them as much as they want to get to know me. So you kind of put that power back for yourself. The other things that you can sort of do is breathe and hydrate. Remember those basics of being a human, right? Take breaths in between the different recruiting meetings that you have. maybe keep some water by you. So, you know, before and after you're chatting with a recruiter, you can sort of hydrate and kind of replenish your body and yourself. The other one is kind of working on your body posture. So there are studies that show that there are these things called power poses. So if you stand in this powerful pose, it's supposed to sort of help boost that confidence and almost kind of like fake it until you make it, right? The thing that I find really helpful too is whenever I get a little bit nervous, especially if I'm about to present, right? I might clasp my hands kind of like this, have my thumbs touching, and I feel like that sort of helps me channel some of my anxiety. I'm obviously not walking around like this. It's usually in my lap or down in front of me, but that sort of helps me channel that anxiety too. So feel free to take breaks. You know, they have the availability set for a reason. So if you are in Brazen or Career Eco, you can turn that off and on to sort of show employers I'm ready to talk, or maybe I need a moment to kind of take a breather, right? So feel free to take breaks as you need to. And then lastly, you can practice via Big Interview. So this is a really helpful platform. It is for mock interviews, and it has some AI that will kind of give you some feedback, but you can definitely use it to sort of practice that elevator pitch if you'd like. So it sort of simulates that. Okay, so some additional resources. Like I said, there are some really great tutorials out there. Here are some of the ones that I used. Feel free to kind of screenshot that, or again, we'll send out some of these slides afterwards. Those are really helpful. If you do have any questions, feel free to kind of ask. So feel free to ask in the chat here. But again, come visit us. So if you're worried about this or you're not really sure what to do, come and hang out with us. We will help you out. We also do other things like career major exploration. So if you are feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing next and I'm not sure where I'm taking my life, come and talk to us. If you feel like you want to switch your major, we're a good starting place to sort of have those conversations. We also do career assessments, job and internship planning, any sort of document review, so resumes, cover letters. We also do grad school planning. So if you're not sure you want to quite go into the workforce yet, and you maybe want to continue your studies, come and see us. We also do events like these. You can find us on Hire You Texas, powered by Handshake, so you can locate us there. We are labeled under TCE, so whenever you look for us, look for that acronym. And feel free, does anybody have any last questions? Feel free to put those in the Q&A. If not, kind of hang around for a minute or two more. We want to hear from you. Please let us know what you think about these events. We're always trying to make them better for you guys. This is a very short survey. It's like 4 questions after you fill out kind of the demographic piece. So please, please, please do that lovely survey. If you do leave a quote on there, you might have a chance to be featured on our website. It's very exciting. Again, my name was Emily Swanson, and this was Virtual Career Fair Prep. So again, I will stay around for a minute or two, see if any Q&As come in. If not, I hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck in those career fairs. Bye.